Hey, what's up guys? I'm Theo Joe, and we got a lot of really cool things that happened in the tech world this past week, so we're gonna go over what I think are the 10 coolest ones. So I'll try to get through these relatively quickly, but there is a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Let's just get right started. Starting off for number 1 is a new layout for YouTube, and also along with it, a new secret dark mode feature. So you may have already heard about the new layout for YouTube that's been tested in the past couple months. Some people, a small number of people have been getting this test randomly, but now you can actually enable it manually yourself if you want to. So the first way to do this is all the way at the bottom of the page on YouTube. You can click the link that says test out new features, and it will take you to the good old test tube for YouTube. And it should have a way to test out the fresh new look for YouTube, and you just enable it. And then that should make YouTube look much different, although the general layout is the same, just looks much more fresh, I guess, as they just said. And if you don't have this link to enable it in the test tube, you can actually go into the Google Chrome console in the developer mode and enable it with the following command. You just press Control-Shift-I, type it into the console, press enter, and that should enable the new layout. And I'll of course put that command in the description so you don't have to type it out. And then with this new layout, if you want to enable the dark mode, you can go to just click the avatar top right like you normally do, except this time the menu looks a little bit different and there's an option to enable dark mode, and it does exactly as it says. You just click it and it makes the layout for YouTube from white to black. So this could be useful, especially if you tend to watch YouTube videos late at night. Definitely a good thing to know about. And of course, if you don't like it, you can disable it as well. At the bottom right of the screen, there is a little icon with a man running out a door, and if you click that, it restores the old version of YouTube and goes back to normal, at least for now. Eventually, I'm sure they'll make it, of course, so you can't disable it, but for now, while it's just being tested, you can. Next up, number 2 is another new thing. You guys, I'm sure, know about Google Earth, the very popular software. It's been out for years, but now Google has released an all-new Google Earth, which is now a web version, as well as a new update to the Android version, but we're mostly going to talk about the web version, because it's basically the entire full version of Google Earth. Now you can access it right through your web browser. And it actually has a pretty good amount of features. For example, there's Voyager mode, which is like a virtual guided tour of a bunch of different locations throughout Earth. You can learn more about them, as well as a I'm feeling lucky button, so you can just go to a random place and learn about that as well. And of course there is a 3D button, so you can change from 2D to actually turning around and changing your perspective, like using the middle mouse button. You can rotate around buildings, and surprisingly, it does a really good job, I think, of converting 2D objects into 3D. You can pretty much go to any place on Earth, and I guess it has analyzed all these satellite images and determined which things are buildings, which things are cars, and how high the buildings are, and then created 3D models out of them so you can kind of look around on that. And it's surprisingly good. I mean, it does look kind of janky, you know, that's not exactly high resolution. It looks weird, but I think even though it does look kind of weird, you can still tell that it knows what the thing's supposed to look like, and really it's just kind of limited by the satellite image itself. So really cool. I think this is a neat thing to look at. You can just go on earth.google.com, mess around with it. It's lots of fun. All right, next up is about the Galaxy S8, which is missing a major feature that they were talking about. Well, part of it at least, which is Bixby, the virtual assistant that is, I guess, trying to compete with Google Assistant. And Samsung says that the voice assistant in English isn't launching with the phone for some reason. So you can still do some of the other AI features, such as the vision, which tells you what things are if you point the camera at it, and home, but apparently you can't talk to it like you would expect to do with any virtual assistant. I don't know why they did this. I assume they wanted to launch it with it, but maybe they had some big drawbacks. But overall, I think it's really bad on their part that they're not launching one of their flagship features with the phone. Also, some other bad news. A lot of you who have been following know that there's a Bixby button on the S8, which is supposed to launch the Bixby assistant. But a lot of people figured out that if you didn't want to use Bixby, you could actually remap that button to Google Assistant or whatever you wanted. Well, Samsung is apparently not having any of that because they are blocking that remapping feature. So now you have to use it with Bixby. Even if you want nothing to do with Bixby, you have to use it. Which I honestly think is so stupid and short-sighted on Samsung's part. I mean, I can see why they want people to use their assistant, but really, you're gonna force people who really don't wanna use it at all enough to remap it, and you're gonna make them do it. It's so stupid. I mean, a lot of people are gonna see this and say, look, this is an inferior AI assistant. We don't wanna use it, it's stupid. Why would we use this when there's Google Assistant that is way better in every way? Samsung, it's just dumb. Come on, what are you doing? In any case, hopefully there will be a workaround, but it seems like the way they did it won't be able to be bypassed unless you have root access to the phone. Very unfortunate. Hopefully some smart people will figure out how to fix it. All right, now the next story, which is really cool but also kind of scary actually, is that some researchers at Newcastle University in the United Kingdom figured out that they can detect someone's PIN password on their phone just using the gyroscope on the phone by actually detecting how people move their hand when they go to type in their password, and just using that, they can basically figure out what your password is. Now, it's very clever actually, because if you think about it, you can see how if you're gonna be typing in a password, you might move your hand, and I guess everyone pretty much does it the same way actually. So they were actually able to use this gyroscope data to figure out how the phone is tilting and what that means, which number they're pressing on the phone, which is crazy. And apparently it's also incredibly accurate, because on a 4-pin code, on the first try, they were able to figure out what the code was with 70% accuracy, and by the 5th try, 100% accuracy. How crazy is that? Pretty scary to think about if some hackers were able to somehow install a virus on your phone or something, and then access the gyroscope data and figure out which numbers you're typing in. I mean, it could even be for like a credit card or something, especially considering that apparently what I'm told is that a lot of apps, they don't require special permission to access the gyroscope. And so really any app could do this and figure it out, as long as they have all this research data, I guess, that they use to figure out what these codes are. I don't think any average hacker is gonna know how to calculate this, but who knows, maybe in the future, if enough put their mind to it, it could be a risky thing. Of course, I don't really think we have to worry about it, because it would be way easier, for example, to just look at someone typing in the password to figure out what they're typing in, or just record them. I don't think this would be very practical in terms of stealing someone's PIN code, but maybe, who knows? And also, it could be mitigated just by using a technique such as changing the position of the numbers on the keypad when you go to type in your phone. Might be a little bit inconvenient, but if you wanted to enable that feature, then obviously they wouldn't be able to figure out what PIN you're typing in, because they don't even know where the number is or what number you're pressing at all. All right, next up, a new awesome feature for mobile version of Google Chrome called page anchoring. And this is something that a lot of people won't even notice, but you should know about it because of how great it is. Now, if you use your phone for any type of internet, one of the most annoying things possible is when you go to a new page and you're trying to scroll through and read it, and in the middle of reading it, the page jumps because part of the page loads that didn't load before, which pushes the page down. Or even if it's an ad will just appear out of nowhere in front of what you're reading. It's the most obnoxious thing in the world. But there's a new feature called page anchoring that I just mentioned, which fixes that. So Google Chrome, apparently in most cases, should be able to see where on the page you are and hold the page there. Even if things on the page are loading, it will keep what is in view, even if something loads. So this is something that people won't even notice because it's removing something that's annoying, but now that you know about it, maybe you'll start to notice this happening less often. It won't fix it in every case, especially on more complicated websites where it can't really figure out what's going on, but it should work in most cases, I think. And of course, it's gonna get better as time goes on. So thought you guys would wanna know about that. All right, moving on. Facebook is launching a brand new service called Facebook Spaces, which is like a virtual VR world that you would use with your Oculus headset. And the idea is you can go online with friends and create private rooms, and then you would each have like a virtual avatar and interact with people in a virtual world to look at photos or videos or drawings and things like that. And personally, I think this would be a really cool service if it wasn't made by Facebook. You know what I mean? It's like Facebook has so much control over our everyday lives. Now they want to create a virtual world that they have access to. I don't know, it just seems a bit creepy, a bit weird. Anything they do these days, you kind of have to be suspicious about because they have such a poor track record in terms of privacy. So I'm a bit skeptical, even though it is kind of cool, we'll have to see. Besides that though, some other features include being able to take photos of yourself and then it creates an avatar based on those photos, which is kind of cool. And then you can create 3D objects that you use to play with friends or whatever. And these 3D virtual environments aren't really anything new. There are other services out there for virtual reality like Space VR that does this. You go into like a pool hall or whatever and play games. So I don't think this is going to be the only option, thank God. But I guess if you do want to use Facebook's version, it's there. All right, next. Now, have you ever thought that maybe the one thing you needed on a credit card was a fingerprint sensor? Well, that might soon be a reality. MasterCard is apparently testing out a new type of credit card that has a fingerprint sensor on it for added security, which I think is actually awesome. I think that's a great idea, to be honest. I mean, the whole idea is that you don't want people stealing your credit card, and if they do, you don't want them to be able to use it. So the current type of technology we have outside the US, there's chip and pin, so you put the chip in and then you have to type in a PIN code even for your credit card, and then if you don't have the PIN code, you can't use your credit card. In the US, you really only have to use PIN codes for debit cards, and for credit cards, you just sign it, and that's supposed to be security. Everyone knows that no one really checks the signature, so if someone steals your credit card, they're not gonna really have any problem using it. But this would actually add a lot more security and probably be convenient enough where people wouldn't complain about it. You just have to slide in the credit card, hold the thumb on it just like you were holding it anyway, and it would detect, all right, this is the right person, and use it. Now, I've said this many times before, fingerprints are not great passwords because you can't change them. If anyone stole your fingerprint, they could use it for a lot of things. But I think in this case, if it was an added security measure, it can't hurt. And especially in that case of where you would otherwise just be signing anything, literally zero security at all, this would be way better than that. So I would welcome this new feature. I would use it. I think it's awesome. Speaking of security, you may have also heard about a recent type of phishing attack where hackers, or really anyone, could register a domain that looked exactly like a reputable site, such as apple.com. In the link URL, it would say apple.com, it would say secured, and it might even look like apple.com, but it's not, and it could be run by hackers. And this was because they were able to register using Unicode characters instead of the actual letters in the URL. Well, Google has now fixed this problem, and now if you were to register a URL with a domain that just uses Unicode characters, it will now show the Unicode characters in the raw form instead of the characters that look like the website you thought it was. Now, this sounds a bit complicated, but it is known as a homograph attack. Now, you don't really have to know anything about it other than Google Chrome has now fixed it, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So if you did hear about this before, it's fixed. All right, moving on, just a few stories left. This one is actually pretty funny. It's about a startup that created an invention that is possibly the most unnecessary invention ever created, seriously. It's called Juicero, and it's a kind of interesting idea, actually, if you think about it on the surface. It's supposed to be like a Keurig of juice, and the idea is that you buy these pouches of juice, and this juicer squeezes the pouches and creates a juice out of it and puts it in the cup or whatever. The thing is, this juicer costs $700, and people figured out that instead of buying the $700 juicer, you can just squeeze the bag yourself and do the same exact thing. So they had you buying the $700 machine that literally just squeezes the juice pouch, and that's it. It says it has all these sensors in there. It's like, what? It squeezes juice out of a pouch. You don't even need a machine. You just buy the pouch and squeeze it into a cup and it's faster. So that's kind of funny. And they're actually allowing refunds now for people who don't want it because they realize how stupid it is. and it actually dropped the price to $400. No surprise there. So I just thought it was kind of funny that they created this thing that is so utterly pointless. Okay, coming near the end, Google has finally made it. So Google Home now supports multiple users, although they're still missing some major features like the Remind feature, but they're moving towards it, I think, with this. So before, if you were using Google, you could just use one person's account, basically. So if multiple people were using the Home and they wanted to listen to the music or the news, they would just use whoever's account that was, and they wouldn't be able to customize it at all. But now with the new update for the Home app, you can train it to use your voice, and it can actually distinguish between up to 6 different people on the same device. So each person can customize what news they want to get, what type of music they want to listen to, and that sort of thing. I still think it's so stupid that you can't do reminders. I mean, come on, you can do it on the Google Assistant. You can't even do it on Google Home. What are you waiting for, Google? At least now it seems like, as I said, that this is the next step in allowing that, because now they're going to be able to distinguish who wants the reminder, even though I kind of said you could just say, remind Joe to do this, but whatever. Moving towards it. If you haven't updated already, check it out. All right, finally, some quick news for Windows 10. As you guys know, there have been a couple major updates for it, like the Creators Update very recently and the Anniversary Update, both releasing major features. And now, Microsoft has announced that Windows 10 is going to get a regular twice yearly update schedule for Windows for major updates. So now, they kind of had some spread out updates. We weren't really sure how often they would release these major updates. Now we know we're going to get it twice a year, which I think is great. It's actually pretty often. I thought maybe they would just do once a year. And they said the same schedule is going to be for Office 365. The Microsoft Office suite of different programs will also be updated twice yearly. So that's it. We had a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Hopefully you guys found these pretty cool. If you did, let me know what you think down in the comments section. And of course, if you want to keep watching, I'll put some other videos right here. You can just click on those even if you're on a phone. And if you want to subscribe, I make new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, usually with some news on Saturday if you want to watch more of that. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. Also be sure to give it a thumbs up as well. And again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.